warm invitation to the second half of life. Have you ever paused, truly paused, and asked yourself, what kind of life am I shaping now, not in the past, but right here, right now? We spend the first half of our lives chasing success, family, approval, perhaps even healing from things we never fully understood. We work hard. We sacrifice. We prove ourselves. We raise children. We build homes. But what about the second half? If you're between the ages of 50 and 80, this message is for you. Not because you've reached the end of the road, but because you've reached a sacred turn in it. A turn where wisdom begins to whisper louder than ambition. Where inner peace begins to matter more than outer praise. Where the time we have left becomes more precious than the time we once had. Today, I invite you to sit with me not for advice, not for rules, but for reflection. Because the second half of life is not about running faster. It's about walking deeper. And walking lighter. This video will share 6 emotional truths, 6 powerful insights that I've gathered over decades of listening to older adults, watching their joy, their grief, their resilience, and their transformation. I invite you to stay with me until the very end. And if these words resonate, consider subscribing to this channel, leaving a comment, and sharing this message with someone you love. Now, let us begin the quiet return. Not to who we were, but to who we were always meant to become. 1. Health is not just a gift, it's your greatest wealth. When we are young, health is invisible. It hums in the background like electricity in the wall, steady, assumed, unnoticeable. We run without pain. We sleep without interruption. We recover without worry. But when we reach our 50s, 60s, and 70s, the body begins to whisper. Then it begins to speak. And eventually, if we do not listen, it shouts. As a health and aging expert who has spent over 30 years working with older adults, I can tell you this. No achievement, no inheritance, no recognition matters more than the ability to move without pain, sleep through the night, or breathe without struggle. I once worked with a man named William, who had built an empire: real estate, companies, partnerships stretching across the country. He had 3 homes, a private jet, and a beautiful wife. But by the time he turned 68, his kidneys began to fail. And the irony? He would have traded everything: his wealth, his awards, his possessions for just one more morning without dialysis. Health, he told me in a moment of painful honesty, was the only thing I assumed I'd always have. And now it's the only thing I can't buy back. That sentence haunted me. And I share it with you not to frighten but to awaken. Because if you are in your 50s or 60s and still able to get up in the morning, take a walk, cook your meals, even sweep your own floor, that is not ordinary. That is sacred. There are people who would give everything they have for the ability to walk upstairs again, or to sleep without medication, or to remember where they placed their keys. So let me ask you, have you taken care of your health lately? Have you moved your body in joy, not just an obligation? Have you chosen real food over processed comfort? Have you stretched, breathed deeply, turned off the screen, and stepped into the sun? And more importantly, have you treated your health not as a background condition, but as the foreground priority it truly is? Because here's the truth no one wants to say aloud. If you don't make time for your health now, you will be forced to make time for illness later. And that time comes with regret. You may have worked all your life to build a future for your children. You may have saved money to leave behind. But none of that matters if the last 10 years of your life are lived in a hospital bed. Taking care of your health is not selfish, it's responsible. It's loving. It's one of the most generous things you can do for the people who love you. Because no adult child wants to become a full-time caregiver. No grandchild wants their earliest memories to be of you in pain. And no one deserves to feel like a burden in the final years of life. So today, I encourage you. Walk. Stretch. Drink more water. Go to the doctor before the symptoms get worse. Take the medication. Follow the physical therapy plan. Say no to toxic stress and yes to joyful movement. Feed your body like it's your last home, because it is. You are not too old to change your habits. You are not too late to begin again. And you are not alone in this journey. I've seen 75-year-olds transform their health not by chasing youth, but by honoring the wisdom of their bodies. I've watched 82-year-olds reverse prediabetes, lose weight, find joy in yoga, and laugh louder than they ever had in their 40s. Because when health becomes the priority, everything else falls into place. Joy returns. Energy comes back. Confidence blooms. And perhaps most importantly, the fear begins to fade. You begin to feel not just alive, but vibrantly alive. So if you've woken up this morning without pain, if you can walk to your kitchen, brew your coffee, and smile at your reflection, pause for a moment, place your hand on your chest, and whisper quietly to yourself, "This is already a miracle." Because it is. And now that you know that, what will you do to honor it? Let's continue this journey. In the next message, we'll explore something that quietly shapes every day of our lives, our relationships not just with others, but with ourselves. Stay with me. You are not alone on this path. 2. The quiet power of letting go and why it's the key to peace after 60. There comes a moment in every life when we are faced with a silent choice. Not the kind of choice that makes headlines or gets applause, but the kind of choice that happens quietly, in the heart, when no one else is watching. The choice to let go. Letting go is not weakness. It's not failure. It is, in truth, the most mature, most courageous, and most liberating act a person can choose, especially after 60. You see, most of us spend our younger years trying to hold things together. We hold on to careers that no longer nourish us. We hold on to relationships that hurt more than they heal. We hold on to the dream of how things should have been even when life has clearly shown us otherwise. And what does that holding on cost us? It costs us peace. It costs us sleep. It costs us years we'll never get back, years spent trying to fix, explain, justify, or prove something that was never truly ours to carry in the first place. Let me tell you a story. I once worked with a woman named Eleanor. She was 74 when we met. Polished, kind, intelligent, but always heavy-hearted. During one of our sessions, she told me that she still carried resentment toward her younger sister for something that had happened when they were in their 20s. I asked her gently, "Has she ever apologized?" Eleanor looked down. "No," she said, "but I think about it almost every day. Almost every day. For over 50 years. Can you imagine the weight of carrying a wound that long? Not because it continued to hurt, but because she had never set it down. Eleanor had built a beautiful life. She had children, traveled, volunteered, even learned to paint in her 60s. But beneath it all, she still dragged that invisible burden with her like a stone in her shoe, quiet but relentless. That is the cost of not letting go. And Eleanor is not alone. I've spoken to men who still mourn a failed business that collapsed 20 years ago, to women who still replay a betrayal from their marriage, decades after the divorce, to grandparents who feel guilt for not being there enough, even when they were simply doing their best to survive. Letting go is not about forgetting. It's not about pretending it never happened. It's about choosing freedom over fixation. It's about recognizing that peace and pain cannot share the same home, and that at some point in life, peace must become the priority. I want to speak now to the part of you that still holds on, to the memories that still sting, to the relationships that left scars, to the expectations that were never met. And I want to ask you this. What would your life feel like if you laid that burden down? What would your heart do with all the space that grief and resentment now occupy? Because here's what I've seen again and again. When older adults finally release what was never theirs to carry, their entire body shifts. Their shoulders soften. Their laughter becomes real again. Their eyes brighten not with youth, but with peace. They stop rehearsing the past, and they start rejoicing in the present. And here's the beautiful paradox. Letting go doesn't mean you lose something. It means you reclaim something: your energy, your joy, your inner calm. Letting go is not passive. It's active surrender. It's an act of strength, rooted in self-worth. It's saying, I love myself enough not to suffer over this anymore. I respect my time too much to replay a story that already ended. I trust life enough to make room for what's next. So how do we begin? You don't have to do it all at once. You don't need a dramatic gesture. Sometimes, letting go looks like one quiet breath, one decision not to engage, one refusal to bring up the past again at dinner, one silent blessing whispered over someone who hurt you, and then turning your gaze toward something lighter. Letting go is not a single moment. It's a practice. You begin again each morning. You remind yourself, that is no longer mine. You choose not to chase answers that will never satisfy. You choose not to demand apologies that may never come. You choose to build the next chapter, instead of rereading the last one. You let go not because the past didn't matter, You let go because your peace matters more. I'll leave you with this. There is a tree in Japan called the ginkgo. Every autumn, it lets go of all its leaves at once, thousands of golden petals falling in a single, breathtaking moment. It does not resist. It does not mourn. It trusts the cycle. It trusts that what must go, and that after the letting go, there is space for stillness, for rest, for new life to grow. So too can we. Let go and see what peace finds you. Up next, in Message 3, we'll talk about one of the greatest but least understood powers of older age, the ability to set healthy boundaries with kindness, with grace, and with quiet strength. You won't want to miss it. If this message touched something in your heart, consider leaving a comment. Tell me, what are you ready to let go of? And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and follow our future reflections, each one crafted with your life stage, dignity, and wisdom in mind. You are not alone. Thank you for walking with me. 3. Boundaries, not walls. How to protect your peace without closing your heart. There is a quiet strength that often goes unnoticed. It's not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't need to raise its voice or slam a door to be heard. It simply knows what it can allow, and what it can no longer carry. That strength is called boundaries. As we get older, we often hear advice about letting go, about forgiving, about finding peace. But what we don't hear enough about is this: how to protect that peace once we've found it. Too many older adults, especially those with gentle hearts, confuse kindness with compliance. We confuse compassion with permission. We tell ourselves we must always say yes to avoid hurting others. We convince ourselves that being accommodating is a virtue even when it comes at the cost of our dignity, our energy, or our well-being. But here's what I've learned from decades of walking beside seniors who've faced exhaustion not just from aging, but from always giving. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot offer peace to others if you are constantly abandoning your own. Let me tell you about Harold. Harold was 72 when I met him. He was a retired school principal, sharp-minded, deeply generous, and completely burned out. Why? Because he had 3 adult children who treated him like an emotional ATM. They came to him only when they needed help, financial help, babysitting help, crisis help. Rarely did they ask, "Dad, how are you doing?" Rarely did they say thank you. But Harold, being the loving father he was, kept giving. Until one day, his heart literally gave out. He ended up in the ER with a mild heart attack. His doctor's words were simple but life-changing. You need to learn how to say no, or this will happen again. That moment was Harold's wake-up call. And it became mine, too. Because Harold is not alone. Every day, I meet older adults who are emotionally exhausted not because they've done too little, but because they've said yes too often, for too long, to too many. Let me be clear. Setting boundaries is not rejection. It's protection. It's not about building walls to shut people out. It's about building doors with locks that you can open and close when it's healthy for you. Boundaries are not selfish. They are sacred. And after 60, boundaries are not optional. They are essential. Because your time is precious. Your energy is limited. And your peace is fragile. You are not here to be a dumping ground for everyone's drama. You are not required to attend every argument you're invited to. You are not obligated to explain yourself, defend your choices, or justify your needs. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to choose quiet over chaos, solitude over stress, stillness over noise. Here are a few truths that may help. You don't owe anyone constant availability. A no is a complete sentence. A saying "I need space" is not unkind, it's honest. You're allowed to love someone deeply, and still say, "I can't do this right now." Protecting your peace is not abandoning others, it's returning to yourself. And if you're wondering how to begin, start small. Start with one relationship. Start with one situation that drains you. Start with one truth you've been swallowing for too long. Say it gently. Say it clearly. Say it kindly. But say it. Because the people who truly love you will respect your limits. And the people who don't? They were never honoring you to begin with, they were using your silence. Boundaries are not for pushing people away. They are for letting in what's healthy and keeping out what's harmful. Like a gardener protects the soil, like a lighthouse protects the coast, you, too, must protect what is sacred within you. You've worked hard to find peace. Don't let guilt take it from you. Don't let manipulation twist it. Don't let old habits convince you that martyrdom is a virtue. It's not. Real love has room for no. Real love respects the line between your life and their expectations. So if you're a grandmother who is tired of being the default babysitter, if you're a father who is tired of being treated like a bank, if you're a friend who is always the one giving, listening, fixing, it is not too late to draw a line. Not a line of anger. A line of love. A line that says, I care. But I care for myself, too. I'm here. But I need rest. I love you. But I won't abandon myself to prove it. Let that be your quiet revolution. Because boundaries, when rooted in self-respect, don't push people away. They invite the right people closer, the ones who honor your time, your truth, your tenderness. And you deserve that. At 60. At 70. At 80. Always. In the next message, we will dive into something even more tender, the art of forgiving yourself. Because no matter how many people you set boundaries with, if you are still at war with your own heart, true peace will remain just out of reach. Stay with me. This journey is far from over. And if this message spoke to something deep inside you, share it. Comment below. What boundary are you ready to draw, not in anger, but in self-respect? And if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel. Follow our future reflections. Each one is created to honor the deepest parts of you. Thank you for staying with me. You are not alone. You never were. 4. Forgiveness begins with you, healing the wounds you don't talk about. There is a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace. It comes from pain. It's the silence that sits behind your smile. The one that shows up when you're surrounded by others but still feel alone. The kind that lingers in the quiet moments early in the morning, or just before bed when the world is still, but your thoughts aren't. And more often than not, that silence is carrying something heavy, self-blame. You see, most of us are taught how to forgive others. We are told to let go, to move on, to show compassion even when it's hard. But almost no one teaches us how to forgive ourselves. And by the time we reach our 50s, 60s, or 70s, the weight of that unspoken guilt has often grown unbearable. We carry regret like a second skin. Regret for the things we said. Regret for the things we didn't say. Regret for the relationships we couldn't save. For the chances we didn't take. For the people we hurt. And the people we allowed to hurt us. But here's the truth. You are not the same person you were 20 years ago. You are not the same person you were even 5 years ago. So why do you keep punishing today's version of yourself for yesterday's choices? There's a woman I once counseled named Teresa. She was 79, a mother of 4, and deeply respected in her church community. But despite the love around her, she often said she felt undeserving of joy. Why? I asked one day, after watching her eyes cloud over during what should have been a beautiful conversation about her grandchildren. She paused, then whispered, because I was too strict with my kids. I made them fear me. I see them now as parents, so gentle, so present. And I think, I failed them. Teresa had apologized to her children. They had long since forgiven her. But she had not forgiven herself. That's when I realized something powerful. Self-forgiveness is not about forgetting the past. It's about refusing to let it define your worth. Yes, you've made mistakes. We all have. You may have left someone behind who needed you. You may have stayed in a place that slowly drained you. You may have said something in anger that still echoes in your memory. But listen carefully. You were doing the best you could, with the tools you had, at the time you had them. You didn't know then what you know now. And the very fact that you ache over your past proves that your heart is alive and tender. That is not failure. That is growth. You are not meant to spend the rest of your life paying for moments you cannot go back and change. You are meant to learn from them. To soften. To say, I made a mistake, but I am not the mistake. Let me say that again. You are not the mistake. You are the person who survived it. Who learned from it. Who is now trying bravely to do better, to be better, and to live with a heart that is both wiser and more compassionate. There is incredible courage in choosing to forgive yourself. It requires humility. It requires vulnerability. And it requires love for you. But here's the reward. When you forgive yourself, something beautiful happens. The world begins to feel lighter. You start to breathe deeper. You laugh louder. And the joy that once felt unreachable slowly makes its way back to you. Because self-forgiveness doesn't just release guilt. It restores dignity. It reminds you that you are still worthy of happiness, of peace, of meaningful relationships even with your flaws, even with your scars. So how do you begin? Start by speaking gently to yourself. Watch your inner voice. Is it cruel? Is it judgmental? Would you speak to your child the way you speak to yourself? If not, then change the tone. Replace "I should have" with "I did the best I could." Replace "I messed up" with "I've grown." Replace "I don't deserve" with "I am learning to receive." Write yourself a letter. Apologize to yourself. Say what you've needed to hear for years. Then read it aloud. Not for anyone else but for your own heart. And remember, you don't have to carry what you were never meant to hold forever. There is room in your life for joy again. But only if you stop blocking the door with guilt. Forgive yourself. Not because it erases what happened, but because you deserve to move forward. With peace, not punishment. In the next message, we'll talk about the joy of simplicity, why less truly becomes more after 60, and how embracing what truly matters can set you free. But before we move on, I invite you to pause. Place your hand on your heart. Close your eyes. And say to yourself, "I forgive you." Say it again if you must. Say it until your heart believes it. Because your healing begins there. Leave a comment and let us know. Is there something you've been carrying that you're ready to release? And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next reflection. Each message is crafted with your journey in mind, honoring your wisdom, your story, and your courage. Thank you for staying with me. You are not broken. You are becoming whole. 5. The freedom of simplicity. Why less truly becomes more in later life. There's a strange and beautiful thing that begins to happen as we age. We stop chasing more. More clothes. More approval. More possessions. More noise. And slowly, quietly, we begin to long for something else entirely. Space. Stillness. Clarity. Simplicity. The truth is, most of us spend the first half of our lives collecting. We collect objects, titles, stories, people. We build homes filled with things we thought we needed. We fill calendars with obligations we believed were important. We say yes out of politeness, even when our hearts are crying out for no. But as the years pass, something inside us shifts. We begin to feel the weight of all that clutter, not just in our closets, but in our minds. Not just in our schedules, but in our souls. We start to realize that what we thought would bring comfort has often become a burden. That what we thought would give us security has started to rob us of peace. I once visited a man named George in his small, sunlit apartment. He was 83, lived alone, and had downsized from the 5-bedroom house he once shared with his late wife and 3 children. I asked him if it was hard to leave the house he had lived in for over 4 decades. He smiled, looked around at his neat living room, just a chair, a small bookshelf, and a photo of his wife on the wall, and said, "Hard. Maybe. But I've never breathed easier. I don't spend hours cleaning. I don't trip over old memories I haven't made peace with. I know where everything is. And more importantly, everything I have now, I actually use and love." George taught me something that day. Simplicity is not about having less. It's about holding only what truly matters. And that truth applies far beyond furniture. It applies to how we spend our time. It applies to who we let into our lives. It applies to the thoughts we rehearse each day. Simplicity invites us to ask, does this add peace to my life or take it away? Does this person energize me or drain me? Does this responsibility align with the life I want now or with the one I no longer live? Because the second half of life is not about adding more. It's about editing. And like a great piece of music, what you remove often matters more than what you keep. Let me be honest. You don't need every friend you once had. You don't need to attend every event you're invited to. You don't need to keep every piece of clothing that no longer fits or reflects who you've become. You don't need to keep explaining yourself. You don't need to prove anything anymore. You've done the proving. You've earned your place. You're allowed, now, to curate your life like a gallery, selective, intentional, and meaningful. Simplicity is not just practical. It is deeply spiritual. It allows your heart to breathe. It gives your nervous system a chance to settle. It makes room for what really matters. Quiet walks. phone calls that last hours, books that soothe the soul, laughter around a small kitchen table, memories that aren't buried in clutter, but displayed like treasure. And maybe most important of all, time. Because when you stop spending your days maintaining things that don't feed your spirit, you suddenly have more time for the things that do. You have time for healing, time for joy, time for noticing the sound of rain on the roof or the way sunlight falls through the window in the late afternoon. These small things, they become sacred in later life. So here's what I invite you to consider. What could you let go of today that no longer brings you peace? Maybe it's a pile of clothes that remind you of who you used to be. Maybe it's a toxic commitment you feel guilty backing away from. Maybe it's an outdated idea of success that no longer fits your soul. Let it go. Free yourself. And in that space, invite something else in. Invite ease. Invite quiet mornings. Invite rituals that feel good in your body, stretching, sipping tea, journaling, listening to birdsong. Invite you not the version who is constantly doing, but the version who is finally being. Because at this stage of life, simplicity is not a step down. It's a step deeper. Deeper into wisdom. Deeper into freedom. Deeper into you. In the next message, we'll close this journey with a reflection on what it means to live fully, not just longer, but wiser, freer, and more at peace than ever before. But for now, I encourage you. Look around your life not with judgment, but with gentle curiosity. What could be softened? What could be released? What could be simplified, not because it's a trend, but because it's time? Less is not loss. Less can be love. And in that love, you might just find the joy you thought had left you years ago. If this message touched something inside you, leave a comment. Tell us, what are you ready to let go of to make room for peace? And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to this channel. Every message is crafted with your journey in mind, your wisdom, your rest, your renewal. You are not behind. You are arriving exactly where you're meant to be. Thank you for walking this path with me. 6. Living fully, loving freely, the final gift of growing older. There comes a time in life when we stop asking, how much time do I have left? And begin to ask, what will I do with the time I still have? It's a gentle shift, a quiet turning of the heart. But once it happens, nothing looks the same again. You begin to look at the sunrise differently, not as a passing light, but as a promise. You begin to listen more closely to your loved ones, not for the words, but for the presence. You begin to move more slowly, not because of age, but because you finally understand the value of a single moment. This is the gift of growing older. For decades, the world has taught us that aging is decline, that the best years are behind us, that the purpose of life fades after retirement, after the children leave, after our titles are no longer spoken. But that story is incomplete, because I've seen another truth. I've sat with 92-year-olds who speak with more joy than most teenagers. I've watched 78-year-old women fall in love again, softly, as if for the first time. I've met men in their 70s who finally started painting, finally wrote their memoirs, finally traveled to the country they dreamed about as boys. I've seen widows laugh again. I've seen veterans cry again. I've seen strangers become soulmates in the quiet hallways of senior homes. You see, life does not end with the first grey hair. It doesn't even end with the first wrinkle, the first ache, or the first goodbye. True life begins when you stop performing and start being. Being present. Being honest. Being open. Being loving freely, not fearfully. And yes, there will be grief. The grief of time passing. Of people no longer here. Of the body changing. Of dreams that didn't turn out as planned. But even grief, when softened by love, becomes sacred. It becomes a quiet companion that walks beside joy, not in its shadow, but beside it. Living fully does not mean chasing youth. It means embracing your current season with reverence. It means laughing loudly even if the world thinks you're too old for silliness. It means dressing the way you like, dancing when you want, and saying what your heart knows is true. It means not wasting a single breath trying to be what you're not, because you've earned the right to be exactly who you are. And it means loving. Not in the way the movies taught us. Not for show. But deeply, freely, wisely. Loving the friends who stayed. Loving the family you've built or rebuilt. Loving the mornings when your joints ache but your spirit still stirs. Loving yourself not in spite of your age, but because of it. because only someone who has lived this long can know what it means to say, I made it. Through the storms. Through the noise. Through the quiet heartbreaks no one saw. Through the small joys no one noticed. Through the years I didn't think I'd survive. And yet, here I am. Still becoming. Still learning. Still loving. So what does it mean to live fully in your 60s, 70s, or beyond? It means choosing joy without explanation. It means saying I love you without waiting for it back. It means forgiving not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. It means giving generously, not because you have everything, but because you've discovered what truly matters. It means waking up each day and whispering, I'm still here, and I will make today count. Not in grand ways, not in headlines, but in the quiet triumph of making tea for yourself, of holding a hand, of calling an old friend, of watching the rain without rushing, of noticing the world as if it's new because in many ways, it is. Every breath is a beginning, and in the final chapters of life, you don't need more pages. You just need to write them honestly, with heart, with truth, with grace. If today were a single page in your story, how would you write it? Would you spend it tangled in regret or wrapped in gratitude? Would you spend it proving your worth or simply resting in it? Would you chase after old expectations or open your arms to new wonder? Because the truth is, you don't need to become someone else. You don't need to rewind your life to feel worthy. You don't need to fear the ending to live the middle with beauty. You are not less. You are distilled. You are the essence of a life that has known both fire and rain. You are the evidence that survival is not the end goal, wholeness is. And that wholeness is still waiting to be claimed, one breath at a time. So breathe in this moment. Breathe in this day. Let it be simple. Let it be sacred. Let it be enough. And may you live the rest of your life with one quiet, profound truth in your heart. You are not fading. You are arriving. If you've made it this far, thank you. Not just for watching, but for listening with your heart. Not just for hearing these messages, but for holding them gently, like precious stones gathered along the path of life. We've walked through 6 quiet invitations. To honor your health like the gift it truly is. To let go of pain that no longer serves your peace. To build boundaries that protect your soul without closing your heart. To forgive yourself for being human, not perfect. To embrace the power of simplicity, not as lack, but as clarity. And to live fully, freely, and without apology in the season you're in. None of these messages are easy. They require courage. They ask you to soften where you once hardened. They ask you to be still, when the world told you to keep performing. But they also offer you something priceless in return. Dignity, joy, and peace, the kind that doesn't need noise to be real. So as you go back into your day, I leave you with this. Your age is not a limitation. It is an achievement, a privilege, a kind of wisdom the world deeply needs. And if something in these words stayed with you, even just a line, even just a breath, I invite you to share it with someone you care about, or in the comments below so that someone else may feel a little less alone in their own quiet journey. Tell us, which message touched your heart the most? What truth are you holding on to, starting today? And when you're ready, feel free to explore more of our videos. Each one is crafted as a soft offering not to tell you how to live, but to remind you that your life is already full of meaning. Thank you, truly, for allowing me to sit beside you, even for just a little while. May you wake tomorrow with peace in your chest, clarity in your heart, and kindness first, for yourself. Take good care of your precious days. We'll be here when you're ready for the next conversation. And until then, may your journey be gentle, your steps steady, and your spirit forever free. Thank you for listening. Wishing you a new day filled with light, softness, and everything that truly matters.